This video could actually change your life. If you feel maybe stuck, maybe unmotivated, or like your life isn't moving forward, then you're not alone, especially if you know that you're actually capable of more. Because the truth is, society has programmed you to stay broke, stay distracted, and trapped in this cycle of wasted potential. But if you understand how the system works, then you can break free today. And I'm going to show you exactly how, so let's get right into it. First, understand that your lack of motivation isn't your fault, right? It's your brain that's being hijacked from this invisible system designed to actually keep you weak. So in the 1950s, scientists ran this experiment where they implanted these tiny electrodes into rats' brains, directly stimulating the actual dopamine center. And this is the molecule that's responsible for all the motivation and drive. And what happened next was actually pretty insane. The rats stopped eating. They stopped sleeping. All they did was press this lever consistently, like 7,000 times an hour, just to keep triggering that dopamine hit. And they actually did it to a point where they died from exhaustion. Now, this might sound pretty extreme, right? But this is exactly what's happening to millions of people today. Except it's not a lever that you're pressing. It's social media, it could be junk food, it could be alcohol, porn, the endless entertainment and comfort options. This is our modern day levers. So every time you scroll TikTok or binge watch Netflix, you eat processed junk food, or maybe swipe on dating apps, you're actually triggering artificial dopamine spike. And your brain is like getting flooded with all this high intensity pleasure. Here's the catch. It actually comes with a price. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about the molecule of motivation and ambition. It's what actually makes you want to chase goals, work hard, and take action. But when you consistently hijack it with these instant gratification mechanisms, your brain lowers its baseline dopamine. And the result? You just lose your natural drive. You struggle to focus. You feel drained, unmotivated, stuck. And then worst of all, you don't even know why it's happening. That's probably the worst reason, because if you don't know why something's happening, it's very hard for you to change something. Now, most people don't realize this, but every time you indulge in a quick dopamine spike, you're actually making it harder to enjoy real life. Then the work just feels boring compared to TikTok's infinite scrolling. Or, reading a book just feels slow when your brain is so used to these rapid fire video cuts. Then real relationships feel dull when porn has conditioned you to expect this extreme stimulation. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that you are not lazy. Your dopamine system is broken. You've been conditioned to seek easy pleasure instead of real fulfillment. And if you don't take control, you'll stay stuck in this cycle of low energy, procrastination, and regret. So here's how you can reset your dopamine system and get your natural motivation back in 3 easy steps. Step 1 is your dopamine detox. You want to reset your brain. So ideally take like 24 to 48 hours off all artificial dopamine triggers. This is social media, sugar, gaming, porn, binge watching Netflix, whatever it might be. Anything you deem to be artificial. Go for long walks without your phone. Let your brain experience boredom for a bit. And then what you want to do is actually replace these high dopamine habits with low dopamine ones, like reading or meditation, journaling, and deep work. And don't worry, the point of this is to make these low dopamine activities as stimulating as artificial ones. So step 2 is to rewire your brain for this natural motivation. So you want to delay gratification by choosing to do those hard things first. We get your natural dopamine. Now, if you crave social media, make sure you complete at least, an hour or 2 of deep work before you go on it. And you want to do this in steps. Maybe start with 30 minutes in the first day. And the next week, bump it up to the first hour, then 2 hours deep work, then 3 hours deep work. And you'll see that you start conditioning your brain to receive dopamine at different times of the day from different sources. And the idea is to get to the point where you can maybe go 6 to 8 hours without any artificial dopamine spikes. And your mind and brain and body's conditioned to actually want to get a dopamine from the work that's giving you the fulfillment, money, and the life that you actually want to desire. And that's what we start to do. We start to train our brain to associate dopamine with real effort, gym, business, learning. And trust me when I say it starts to feel as good as artificial dopamine spikes. So set small daily wins and you allow the momentum to build your motivation. Now, step 3 is to optimize your environment for focus and discipline. It's easier to dodge the dragon than try to slay it. So delete all the highly addictive apps from your phone, reduce the friction by actually having app blockers on your computer like Freedom, and just remove any high dopamine food from your house. Use these website blockers to prevent mindless browsing. And then you also want to surround yourself with high performance people, because your environment will always dictate your habits. And it's just such an easier way of conditioning your mind and body. See, in 2024, I was trapped in this cycle. cycle of the partying, scrolling, overeating, binge watching. For me personally, it was always a struggle. It's always a struggle to read that book, to write that piece of content, or do that hard thing at work. It's because I was so programmed to receive dopamine from these artificial sources, where there would be the junk food, whether it was the partying that my mind was trying to recover from on the weekend, whether it be the social media. My mind would just go and gravitate to whatever was easier. And this is the problem, because it was just finding those dopamine sources that were very high impact, that couldn't compare to the work that I was doing. And I never wanted to create content. But the moment that I actually started to notice and understand this concept of dopamine and started to be a lot more disciplined in terms of when I would allow these artificial dopamine spikes into my day, then all of a sudden I started to condition my mind, and I started to wake up in the morning wanting to create content. I started to wake up in the morning wanting to read. I started waking up in the morning wanting to eat whole food. It's actually insane. So it's important to remember that whatever you've engineered into your life, you can engineer out of your life. And the way you're living currently, you have just programmed, but you've done it with zero intention, and you fell victim to the outside world and the outside system. And what I want for you guys is take back control. Take back control of your mind and your body and start re-engineering in a way that it could benefit you. Imagine you waking up and wanting to do work as much as you want to scroll to social media. Imagine you waking up and wanting to eat eggs for breakfast more than you want to eat McDonald's or Burger King or whatever it might be. That's the place you can get to. That's what I want for you guys. And with some intention and some discipline, you will get there. And because of me being able to re-engineer my brain to get dopamine from more important things, I scaled a business from $15 to $50 million, not by learning any new strategies, but just by rewiring my mind. Because most people just don't lack ambition like I did at that time. We've just been hijacked our dopamine system. We fell victim to the system, to the corporations that have engineered all their products to suck the dopamine out of us. So what I suggest is that start small and work your way up. Identify the biggest artificial dopamine culprits in your life and cut it out for 7 days. Whether it's social media, whether it's messages, email, WhatsApp, whatever it may be, and watch your mind, your motivation, and your vision start to change. And without this thing I'm about to share with you, it's nearly impossible to stay disciplined. So Viktor Frankl has this amazing quote. It goes, "A person with a strong enough why can bear almost any how." So the point is that your willpower potentially also isn't your problem. The real issue is you don't have a why, something strong enough to actually override all your bullshit excuses. And just think about it. Like when someone has an undeniable reason, nothing stops them. A parent who needs to provide for their kids, they'll figure it out. An athlete who refuses to lose, they'll actually outwork everyone and find out new ways to win. But in reality, if you don't have a vision that excites you, then all these distractions will always pull you in, because the thought of them is more entertaining than your future self. The Netflix, the social media, the pointless scrolling, they all win because your brain doesn't have a clear mission on what to focus on. And this is why most people stay stuck, not because they don't want success, but because they don't have a strong enough why, strong enough reason to actually demand it. And your brain works like a computer. It has limited bandwidth. And the clearer your vision is, the more your subconscious filters out all the distractions and starts navigating you towards the path that you want to go. Just think about this for a second. Like when you get a new car, you start seeing it everywhere. Why? Because your brain has this system called the reticular activating system, and it trains it to notice certain patterns into your life, the ones you're actually looking for. And the same applies to success. If you don't write down your 10x vision, if you don't clearly define where you're going, your mind won't recognize opportunities actually in front of you. And that's why the most successful people obsessively focus on their vision. They don't just think about it once, they write it down, and they write it down every day. They visualize it and they act as if it's already there. And it's exactly what I do. I write down my goals every single day, and I have triggers to remind myself of them a couple times through the day. Because once your vision is locked in, the motivation becomes automatic, and you need to prime your mind to consistently remind it why you're doing what you're doing. So let me ask you this: how hard is it for you to avoid distraction? Because the reason you keep failing into mindless habits isn't because of lack of discipline. It's because you haven't created a vision clear enough that overrides all your distraction. Your brain follows clarity when you don't give it a mission. It defaults to whatever gives it the quickest dopamine hit. But the moment you make your vision specific, like exactly how you want your life to look 10, 15, 20 years from now, the empire that you're building, the impact you want to make, you will start making different choices automatically. And that's why the strongest people in the world, they don't have to rely on willpower. They use a vision as their weapon. So here's how you're going to lock this in. Step one, you're going to write down your 10x vision into 4 different parts. You're going to talk about your lifestyle, what you want your life to look at, the house you're going to live in, the holidays, all that kind of stuff. You're going to talk about the business that you're going to have in terms of the team, the revenue numbers, all that stuff, the relationships, and then your impact. I want you to write down those 4 domains and be super clear with as much detail as you can and describe your current life. And then step 2, I need need you to read and visualize it every single day because your brain needs repetition to believe that it's real. So use these triggers to remind yourself of it. And now step 3, you need to act as if it's already happening. Like, make decisions today like your future self would. Create daily non-negotiables around the future identity and the person that's capable of achieving this vision. And then step 4, you need to stop worrying about the how. When the vision is strong enough, the right actions will reveal itself along the way. The path will illuminate itself as you walk it. But the point is to have the vision so you have the direction on where to go. And most people don't even take 5 minutes to write down their vision. Then they wonder why their life's the same year after year after year. And that's the difference between the 1% and literally everyone else. The top 1% wake up every single day already knowing exactly what they're building, and then they move certainty and conviction. Now, there are a few other things that you must do if you want to always be motivated and accomplish everything that you know you're capable of. But the first one and the most important one is this. You have to completely shift your identity in order to align with your future self. Because most people don't realize they're just stuck, not because they lack skills and not because they're lazy, but because their ego is still clinging on to their old identity, the person that they've always been. This is something called ego survival bias. The mind just resists change, and not because change is hard, like it is hard, but because transformation threatens the current existence of the current identity that's been protecting for years. But here's the truth. If you want a new reality, then you need to create a new personality. You have to become the person who naturally creates success. You have to become the character, the attractive character that's a magnet for everything that he desires in his life before the results even show up. You need to do before you have so you can be. So how do you actually do that? What's a practical operational way to do it? Easiest way to do it is start by creating daily non-negotiables. Daily non-negotiables to become a resume to yourself and the rest of the world of the type of person you are. These are your habits, these are your routines, these are your standards, and these are aligned with what your 10.0 self is. So like every morning, just ask yourself, what would the most successful version of me do today? What is that? How they show up in the world? What habits would they have? How they treat themselves and other people? And then exactly do that. It's as simple as that. Because when your actions and your habits and your standards all align with your highest version of yourself, success just becomes inevitable. It just comes effortlessly. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Throughout this video, it's all about the mindset, it's the habits, it's the strategy. It is, but none of those really stick if your environment is working against you, right? And this is the point I'm trying to make. Because here's the truth. Your environment shapes your actual identity. And then your identity shapes your actions. And if you're surrounded with people with low standards, distractions, people who don't think big and don't care about their personal development and their future self, then eventually that becomes you as a byproduct without even you realizing or not. This happens on a subconscious level because we are the 5 people that we surround ourselves with. I'm sure you've heard this before. So let me break this down. Most people today are drowning in content. They're watching videos, reading books, they're listening to podcasts, but they're not taking action because we don't have an education problem, we have an application problem. And more information just isn't the answer, but application is. And too much consumption without execution, it just leads to one thing, and that is analysis paralysis. And your mind just gets like overwhelmed. You doubt yourself, you procrastinate, you spiral, and then nothing really changes. And I used to be that guy. Endless tabs were open, constantly to hours of podcasts every single day. And then I realized one thing. Has my behavior changed as a consequence of actually listening or learning this thing? And when the answer was no, then I realized all I was doing it for is entertainment, not education. And we're always searching for this next thing instead of actually doing the thing. And that was keeping me stuck for so long. But everything did change when I started curating my environment, surrounding myself with high-level thinkers, and they were holding me accountable as much as I was holding myself accountable at the time. Because people who are already operating at this certain frequency, I want to be around them so I can step into that frequency, that energy. I got in the room of winners, and just by being around them, that naturally pulled me forward faster than any course or book could ever do. So here's what I recommend. Start limiting your content consumption. One source, one coach, or one direction. Then implement it like your life depends on it, because it actually does. So I want you guys to upgrade your environment, upgrade the information that you actually are inputting into your mind, and upgrade your circle. Design an environment that pulls the best out of you, because success won't come from what you know. It comes from what surrounds you. And finally, I want you to ask yourself, if you dedicated one full year to your goals, how much could your life actually change? So in 2024, I did what I called a reverse gap year. I cut out everything. I said no to everything that didn't have anything to do with me achieving my goals. For a full year, I cut all devices. I stopped all the partying. I stopped hanging around negative people. I just wanted to go all in on creating the best version of myself. And what happened was I built my business to where I did $1 million in a single day. I got down to 6.8% body fat, started my personal brand, started my coaching business, and met my dream wife, all in the space of a year. Because when you have such a singular focus on being better and improving yourself, you start to operate at this high frequency. And when you start to operate at this high frequency, because you're doing everything that's integrity for yourself, you start to attract success into your life effortlessly. It was insane. I did more in that 1 year than I did the previous 10 years of my life. And I think most people never succeed because they never fully commit and never eliminate all the distractions. They never just focus on themselves. And if they were to do this, they would have a reference point of how this feels, and they will see that it's such a more enjoyable and fulfilling life than giving into the distractions, the partying, all those seductive high dopamine activities. So I want you guys to dedicate 12 months of ruthless focus. Say no to all distractions and say yes to long-term success. Say yes to your future self and redefine your trajectory in the process. Like seriously, you need to ask yourself the question and be totally honest with yourself. What if you just gave yourself like one whole year, fully focused, zero distractions, and you did a reverse gap year? You went all in. What would your life look like? What would you achieve? Because most people spend their lives, going half in, they're half committed. They never actually go pro. And I want you guys to go pro for one whole year. Chase your goals relentlessly while saying no to everything else that's in the way, and see what type of life you find more fulfilling or enjoying. And then you can come back and rationalize a life by actually understanding what you're capable of. And that's why a lot of people never break through. Not because they don't have what it takes, but because they're not committed. So now it's time for you guys to do a reverse gap year, remove the artificial dopamine spikes, and actually change your life forever. And if you like this video, check out how I made $50 million in under 3 years in the next one.